Plus there is a ground on merits. Suppose he has treated an expenditure as capital expenditure and disallowed that under 37 that it is not a revenue expenditure. Let's assume these are the issues which are there before the CIT appeals. CIT appeals dismisses your ground on 147, saying that okay, this is a valid reopening and therefore it is valid. Okay, but the CIT appeals feels that the expenditure is revenue, then therefore the claim of deduction under 37 should be granted. Now, if this is the case, will the assessee generally file an appeal to the tribunal? Practical thing. Because once I have got the deduction for expenditure, the assessee will say, why should I file appeal to the tribunal? Correct? At a practical level, any prudent person would do that. Now, the revenue would file an appeal saying what? That the deduction, the claim of expenditure should have been disallowed under 37. Okay. Now, assessee has not filed an appeal, revenue has filed an appeal. If revenue's appeal gets disallowed, then assessee will be aggrieved. Correct? The tax payment will ultimately come on the assessee. So, there what will happen is 253(4) says that even if you have not filed an appeal, and the revenue files an appeal, or I mean if it is other way around also, if the assessee files, revenue can file a cross objection, right? So, the assessee can file a cross objection within 30 days of the receipt of notice of the tribunal. Now, what happens is, suppose you file an appeal to the tribunal, you will file it with the registrar will give a notice and a copy of your appeal to the other party. So, if you file, he will give it to the department. So, that is the date of receipt of notice of appeal papers by the department. Okay. Other way around, if the department files, the notice will be issued to the assessee and assessee will get a copy of the appeal papers of the tribunal. So, that will be the date of receipt of notice of the tribunal. So, within that 30 days, you can file a cross objection. In cross objection, what grounds you can take? They are not restricted to the grounds related just to the grounds taken by the revenue. Now, in our example, what is the ground taken by revenue? That it is capital expenditure, it is not a revenue expenditure. My cross objection can go to any aspect of the CIT appeals order. So, when I file a cross objection, my grounds of appeal will not be restricted to only the issue on which the revenue has filed an appeal, but I will also take 147 ground, saying that 147 itself was bad in law and you couldn't have reopened it. I will also take a further ground that if it is taken as capital expenditure, you at least give me depreciation on this. Okay. So, second ground is related to the ground taken by the revenue, but my first ground is not directly related to the ground, but it is emanating from the CIT appeals order. It is an issue on which I can fetch. So, compare if I don't file an appeal and you think that any issue in the CIT's order, the first appellate authority's order is against you, then once you get an tribunal appeal papers or notice, you should try and file a cross objection on any issues which is against you. Whether the revenue is litigating that or not litigating that doesn't matter. I'll give one more example. Suppose in this there was one more disallowance, say software expenses or something else, miscellaneous expenses or travel expenses. The assessing officer disallowed 100%. CIT appeals disallowed 50%. Now, you may not file an appeal on this 50%, you may think it is small, there is not worth litigating it, and we will leave it at. You may also have lesser documents and all. Then the revenue files an appeal on this first issue of capital expenditure. In this, your cross objection can still take up that issue of travel expenditure. So, it can go to issues on which also you have not thought that you want to bury the thing. The logic for this is, see, when you get a part relief of CIT appeals, when you are getting a part relief at CIT appeals, the assessee thinks that this part relief is fine, I will pay this tax and close the matter, I want peace, right? But when the revenue litigates the other grounds, the assessee will naturally think that my tax liability will now go up and therefore this part relief is not sufficient to me. Therefore, I should get an opportunity on these matter to litigate on the other matters also. This also is there in Rule 41 of CPC, Civil Procedure Code, and same has been incorporated in the income tax by virtue of 253(4). But this has further interesting aspects. Now, suppose revenue has filed the appeal, and you have filed a cross objection. What if revenue's appeal is dismissed? Can you still press cross objection? Revenue's appeal may get dismissed for various reasons. One, it might be low tax effect, for example. It can be not maintainable, they have filed it delayed after 2 years, for example. It could be dismissed on merits. The bench may hear it and then decide that it is a revenue expenditure, not capital expenditure, therefore revenues ground is not valid. Okay. Can the assessee still press cross objection that my cross objection should be here, there? If you see page 4, last 3 lines, last 3 lines, the assessee can file a cross objection verified in the prescribed manner against any part of the order of the CIT appeals, any part of the order, and such memorandum shall be disposed by the appellate tribunal as if it were an appeal presented within the specified time as per subsection 3. So, does cross objection become an appeal? What does it say? As if it were an appeal. So, how should the cross objection be disposed? As if it were an appeal. That means it is an independent appeal. So, revenues appeal, assessee appeal. One, we have cross appeals where both of them file an appeal. Right? Now, one, we have a cross objection where revenue has filed an appeal. So, the order is passed say on 30th October. Revenue files an appeal by 25th December and you file a cross objection say 20th January. Okay? So, this is the time period. Let us look at this example. Can your cross objection be treated as independent appeal? If independent appeal, I have to file 60 days from 30th October. Ideally, if I got an order on 30th October, it should be filed within 60 days from the original order, right? But I have now filed in January. So, will my cross objection still stand as if it is an independent appeal? Okay, because the words in 253(4) says you will dispose it as if it were an appeal. Now, given that this language of cross objection in 253(4) is very similar to order 41, rule 22 of CPC. Some precedents there in the CPC also help us to understand this. What have the court said is that if the revenues appeal is disposed on merits, that means it is admitted and disposed on merits. In those cases, the cross objection is an independent appeal. Even if the revenues appeal is dismissed, assessee's cross objection can be heard on merits and dismissed. So, the tribunal will be under obligation even if the assessee presses that my cross objection should be heard, then in those cases tribunal is bound to hear the cross objection. Where the appeal has been disposed on low merit, low tax effect cases also, generally the tribunals have taken a view that cross objection should be heard and disposed on merits if the assessee presses the cross objection. Only cases where cross objection as per decisions in CPC where it will not be heard independently is, suppose revenue files appeal delay by 2 years, right? Now, if revenue files appeal delayed by 2 years, then what happens is that the bench may ask, please justify the delay. Okay? For some reason, they are not able to justify the delay. So, their appeal is not maintainable. And if appeal is not maintainable, as if it was never filed. If it is never filed, the notice which was issued is also not there. So, the CPC decision says, the decisions in Rule 41 says that if the appeal itself is not maintainable for reasons like limitation, territorial jurisdiction or something else, in those cases the cross objection also will not survive and it cannot be independently argued. This is the view which is there in the CPC, possibly in my opinion correct view also, because the originally appeal against which I have filed a cross objection will not be applicable. Just take one more interesting situation. Say the October 30 is the date on which the order has been passed. Revenue files, super efficient, files an appeal on 20th November. It never happens that they file so fast, but anyways, they are super efficient. On 20th November, the assessing officer files an appeal. Okay? The assessee files appeal within 20 days on 10 December. Now, my cross objection is within the original time limit of 60 days from the date of order. My cross objection is within the 60 days from the original thing. So, there the decisions have taken a view that when this cross objection is within the original time limit, you can hear this on merits. Because you can still say that this is an appeal, not necessarily filed against the main appeal. It is not still a cross objection, you can treat it as an independent appeal. Okay. This is the legal point, but at a practical level, if you think that for any reason CIT's order is against you on some points which you think are of interest, try and file the appeal to the tribunal within 60 days from the receipt of tribunal. If the issues are small and don't want to litigate, you can go for cross objection, or legal issues you can take it for cross objection. The benefit of cross objection, you will save filing fees also. There is no filing fees for cross objection. It is free. When you file appeal, the fees range from, various slabs are there, but in cross objection there is no filing fees. So that will not be applicable, right? So this is on the locus standi and cross objection. Any questions you can raise or yeah?
What is the form for cross objection?
It's specified 36A. It was prescribed in yeah.
Not able to think of a situation where department is filing the cross objection.
They can file. They have filed. There are cases where we will see rare because hardly CIT appeals give relief.
What is the fees for that?
Cross objection is no fees. Cross objection no fees. Appeal slab wise. We will see as we go further. Cross objection no fees. They have to be heard together. It is duty of the assessee that if he files a cross objection, move a petition saying that it should be heard with the appeal. They cannot be heard against. Even if there are cross appeals, appeal and cross objection, we should move a petition to the bench that they should be heard together. No, ideally it should be made. If you are aware, make it. If you are not aware, then if appeal gets disposed separately and cross objection, generally they will get to aware because again in the cross objection letter itself you will say this is against so and so appeal. So ideally the bench will club it. Cross appeal sometimes misses out because you may not know that department has filed appeal, that the notice might have come late. That kind of situations may come. It becomes easy for everyone to dispose that matter. Hearing it independently will create. So suppose you have raised a cross objection 147 and the merit is on say capital revenue expense. Just think about it if it is heard separate. It will create unnecessary nuisance, multiple orders, multiple appeals, and unnecessary time consuming issue will be there. So try and move a petition to club it and the bench will club it. Okay.
What happens to the threshold, appealable threshold in the merged cases?
Independent. Suppose revenue has filed an appeal, the tax effect will have to be looked at revenue's appeal, not merged thing. So even if you file a cross appeal, suppose you have filed a cross appeal and revenue has filed an appeal, both of you have filed appeal, so they become cross appeal. In those cases also the tax effect will be looked at revenue's appeal only. Both put together, no, it is not looked at. The circular is very clear of the revenue's appeal only. 30 days from the receipt of notice. So as I said, if the department files an appeal, the registry will take the appeal on record, endorse it that it is filed on so and so date and send you the notice. And you will receive that notice and within that notice 30 days you have to file the cross objection. It is applicable to cross objection also. That's the next thing we will look at it. Right?
When we make an appeal against the CIT order, so the department also can raise the cross objections. I think that was.
Yes, that was his question.
But you mentioned saying that because the appeals don't give relief.
See, what I was saying is at a practical level we are seeing the difficulty is CIT appeals is an independent body, but they really don't. I mean, we all know what is the status. So CIT appeals we don't see so many cases where CIT appeals give relief. If CIT appeals doesn't give a relief, I will file an appeal. Where will department have grievance? If CIT appeals gives me relief, they will file a cross objection. If CIT appeals doesn't give me relief, why will they file a cross objection? Generally, there was a saying that CIT appeals will dismiss 90% of cases and 90% of that 90% will get reversed in tribunal. Though I don't know from where these figures come, but that is again just based on experience. Right? Okay. So next aspect we look at is the limitation 253.3. Simple 60 days from the receipt of order. I have to file an appeal to the tribunal. As per General Clauses Act, and also I have given the decision section 9 of General Clauses Act, the Supreme Court says that while calculating the days, you have to exclude the date of first day and include the last day. So if I receive on 30th October, I will exclude 30 days while calculating the 60 and I will include the last day. So this is how you will calculate the number of days for calculating 60 or whatever days it might be, 30, 60, wherever in the statute the number of days are given. This rule, section 9 of General Clauses Act, read with so many decisions are there. I have cited few decisions, but there are many other decisions also. This can be applied and this is how you will calculate the number of days. Next question comes is, if there is a delay, then what happens? Can the tribunal condone the delay either for filing an appeal or filing a cross objections? So 253.5 for both, for the appeal and cross objection, the concept of condonation delay is dealt in 253(5). Very simple section. It says the appellate tribunal may admit an appeal or permit the filing of appeal or a cross objection after the expiry prescribed in subsection 3 or subsection 4. Subsection 3 is for main appeals and subsection 4 is for the cross objection. If it is satisfied that there was a sufficient cause for not presenting it within that period. So this is the primary condition. There is a delay, whoever is the person who is filing the appeal has to demonstrate that there was a sufficient cause for not presenting it within that period, Now the sufficient cause is what? Who will demonstrate? The burden of proof will be on the person who is filing the appeal or filing the cross objection. When I file appeal, I will be appellant. When I file cross objection, I will be respondent. So it is naturally on the appellant or respondent, as the case may be, to demonstrate what is the sufficient cause. Now this is something which we should all take care. Along with the appeal, if for some reason there is a delay, you have to file a condonation petition for condonation of delay. There is no prescribed format. It can be a normal plain paper application which should detail that why there is a delay, what was originally the time limit for within which I should have filed it, what is the reasons for delay. So there could be numerous reasons. Consultant was not well, tax audit season X, Y, Z, someone died in the family, some health issues, or traveling, the assessee was traveling, the order was received late, or there could be order went in junk email. That is now very good reason most of the times. The email of the department went in the junk, so therefore we could not get the order in time, therefore there is a delay. Okay, so there could be numerous reasons, 1001 reasons for the delay. Whole point is how you articulate it. Generally, if the delay is small, the tribunal is very liberal in terms of condonation of delay. I am not suggesting you file late, but I am just saying that they are liberal. I am not advising you to file late, but they are liberal. And if you see if you see one of the landmark decisions, it says the starting point of considering an application of condonation of delay is the sufficient cause, but the end point is consideration of substantial justice. So no doubt I have to see the sufficient cause, but the point is I should be making, as a bench, as a judge, I should be making a substantial justice. And this decision, Collector Land Acquisition versus Katji, is a landmark decision on delay. Please read this decision, beautiful decision, which lists out what it is and how the delay can be condoned. And another decision also I have given in footnote, Balkrishna versus Krishnamurthy, which says you don't go by number of days, you have to go by sufficient days, sufficient cause. It is not that just because there are 600 days it is bad, or just because it is 30 days it is good. You have to go by sufficient cause, not by number of days of delay. And the assessee or the revenue, whoever it is, will have to demonstrate what was the sufficient cause in detail while in the condonation petition. Okay? And if you see Katji's decision, very clearly says what would assessee benefit by filing delay, and why would anyone delay? Any prudent person will naturally not delay, right? Any prudent person will naturally not delay. So apply those principles given in Katji and try to articulate what is the sufficient cause for the delay. Along with the appeal papers, file a condonation petition. These principles you also apply when you file CIT appeals also. There also there is a same provision that if there is a sufficient cause, CIT appeals can condone the delay. Never miss this condonation petition. At least before CIT appeals, don't miss it. Because once you don't file this condonation petition, you will get an order that there is no reason given for the delay, therefore I am dismissing the appeal. It becomes very easy to CIT appeals to pass 2-paragraph order. Okay? So make it a point that whenever there is a delay, file a condonation petition, try to make proper story, articulate it properly and explain it in the petition along with an affidavit. Yes?
While giving this condonation, if this recent that Supreme Court petition was there, the timeline showing.
Yes. That if it is falling within that, you will have to, you can take that.
No, my question is whether if not citing that particular case will amounts to non-application of condonation.
No. See, even if you don't cite it, at least in tribunal, they will say, if it is it corona period, okay, we will condone it. At a practical level, they will know that this is corona period in high court, in the bench. See, that way judges will generally have, as I said, intention to do substantial justice. So even if you don't cite these cases or these particular notifications, etc., or Supreme Court order, etc., if they feel that this is within that period, it will automatically be condoned. Okay. See, sufficient cause doesn't mean you explain each minute of delay, each hour of delay, each day of delay. There should be sufficient cause, that's all. That there was some reason why assessee has delayed it. And that should be articulated in your petition. And in cases like Corona or other things, generally the tribunal has been very fair in extending those matters. Even the High Court has been very fair in extending those matters. And condoning those appeals and admitting those appeals for further disposals. Okay.
Is there any chances that continuation of delay can be rejected?
Yes, there can be chances if you don't explain the story. If you don't explain.
This could be very common across all assessments.
No, that is why, no, don't make it common across. Try to make it more specific. That is the skill. That is the skill why you are here, and that is why we are here. That you can't just say in everyone, but my CA was not well, my CA was not well, my CA was not well. So at least have some better explanation. Try to make it assessee specific. See, there could be reasons where CA and consultant also may be hospitalized or XYZ reason. That is also fine. That could be one of the reasons. But try to make it more assessee specific. Try to give proper reasons. And there could be sometimes mistake also that I prosecuted an appeal before Karnataka High Court, whereas I should have filed before Madras High Court. It's a valid reason. You can do that. Okay, non-receipt of orders, not well, some family functions, marriage in the family of the assessee, marriage in the family of the CA. So there could be various reasons why you could delay it, but you should articulate it properly. If you don't articulate it properly, especially this happens in revenue appeal. Revenue sometimes file the appeal very late. The standard reason they give, there was a workload of the assessing officer. Assessing officer was very busy, therefore he didn't file it in time. So these, especially if it is very long period, there are cases where they have filed appeal 2,000 days late. There the courts have taken a view that this delay cannot be condoned. There has to be proper reason. You can't say file was missing for 2,000 days, therefore I am filing it now. Right? So in cases where this kind of revenue files an appeal and their delay petitions are of such nature, you should object to the bench that I am objecting to condonation of this delay. If you are arguing for the assessee, you can say that, look, these reasons are not valid, therefore this delay should not be condoned. It will again depend on a case to case, facts to facts, but this is something which you have to keep it in mind. And there are cases where the tribunal, if the reasons are not sufficient, they may not condone the delay. CIT appeals may say that I am also not condoning the delay, and he may pass an order, and where you will have to come to tribunal. So those case situations also could be there. One has to be aware of those things.
The rejection order can be appealed, sir?
Yes, rejection order can be appealed. Rejection order can be appealed. For example, if you have filed a petition to CIT appeals, and CIT says there is a delay of 60 days, I don't accept the reason, therefore I dismiss the appeal. That rejection order, you can appeal it to the tribunal. The tribunal will then evaluate the reasons for rejection given by the CIT appeals, and then it will decide if your reasons were valid. They will say we are condoning the delay and sending the appeal back to CIT appeals to hear on merits. Same thing will happen to tribunal also. If the tribunal says we are not condoning the delay, you can go to High Court. In High Court, the High Court judges will see whether your reasons are valid, and they will say that we are condoning or not condoning and send the appeal back to the tribunal to hear on merits. They will not give decision on merits, but they will only look at the aspect of condonation.
Is it a question of process? The delay dismissed by tribunal?
There are high courts which have admitted this and send the matters back to tribunal, because the question is whether substantial justice is done. Suppose you have a valid reason, the question is whether substantial justice is done. Now, substantial justice can be where it can be taken up in the High Court. Can be taken up.
When you're not able to establish why there is a condonation, you give the reason but you don't have any evidence. Like a wrong advice given by a
Wrong legal advice, there are case laws which says affidavit will have to file. The CA will have to say that I have given a wrong legal advice. You file an affidavit where it's just oral things. The rule itself says that affidavit can be filed, and income tax appellate tribunal, I think rule 10, where it says that affidavit can be filed. In the affidavit, now you are saying that the CA has given a wrong legal advice. So you'll have to file an affidavit. Ideally, the CA gives an affidavit, I have given wrong legal advice, it will be good for the assessee, but no CA may give that affidavit. But otherwise the assessee will have to give an affidavit that this is what the CA said and this is how I have gone forward. And depending on the prudence, the judge may accept it. Try to give along with the petition what evidence you can give, like a doctor's certificate, death certificate, circumstances of such kind, you will have something. Where are not there, support it with an affidavit. Okay.
Sir, in the case where this cross-objection notice or ought to have been received, if those notices get stuck at post office or the postmaster level, what is the remedy client?
Whenever he receives it,
No, he didn't receive also.
See.
Final assessment order itself has come.
see suppose, okay, tribunal suppose what he is trying to say is that revenue has filed an appeal, the department should have, the tribunal has sent a notice and assessee has never received a notice. He straight away gets the final tribunal order accepting revenue's appeal, right? In those cases, move a petition to the tribunal under 254(2) miscellaneous application that I have not got an opportunity of hearing and I have never received this notice, demonstrate that you have not received this notice and therefore recall the order passed against the revenue's appeal. We will see that further, they have a power to recall such order, rule 24. They have a power to recall the order where it has been passed ex parte without an opportunity of hearing. They can recall such orders, you will have to move a petition for that.
Second favorable order of the High Court or Supreme Court, can it be a good ground for condemnation?
In the sense, you are saying that I filed an, I did not file an appeal assuming it is against me and then subsequently a High Court or Supreme Court has come and now I can file. It can file. You can file an condonation petition that now I feel that it is worth pursuing this litigation because of a so and so judgment which has come on so and so date. It's a good cause. Can be done. It's a good ground. Okay. Then on page 6 we have the last ingredients, jurisdiction. What is an appealable orders? There is a list of appealable orders. All of you can easily see 253 and see what are the appealable orders. Only these orders, I just briefly mentioned it here, like order passed under 250, order passed under tonnage tax, commissioner's order under 263. No, commissioner's order under 263 is something which you all should be aware of. See, if the commissioner passes, what is 263? To commissioner, revision he makes. He revises the assessment order, right? So when he is revising the assessment order, he passes an order saying that I am cancelling the assessment. He gives a direction to the assessing officer to do so and so. Okay? Then the assessing officer passes an order giving effect to the CIT's revision order. So this is the normal procedure. Now here there are two orders, right? One is the CIT's order under 263 and the assessing officer's order under 143.3 read with the 263, right? Now what is appealable to tribunal is the 263 order of the CIT. So what you should do is that now 263 order of the CIT will say that he has a jurisdiction under 263. The CIT will say that order passed by so and so is erroneous and prejudicial to the interest of the revenue. Therefore, I am exercising the power under 263 and therefore I am cancelling the assessment of so and so he may say. Against that jurisdictional order of 263, you have to file an appeal to the tribunal. You can't take the issue of jurisdictional to the CIT appeals against the 143.3 263 order. So there are two appeals emanating, keep this in mind. One is 263 order, one appeal to the tribunal. The AO passes an order giving effect to the 263, passes a 143.3 with 263. That is appealable to CIT appeals. It is not directly appealed to tribunal. What we are referring here, 263 is the jurisdictional order of the CIT and that which is filed an appeal to the tribunal. There what you will question the jurisdiction. That the test of erroneous and prejudicial to the interest of revenue is not satisfied and therefore this 263 is bad in law. Once the 263 is bad in law, the consequential order anyway becomes null and void. But if you want to challenge, if you think it is a fit case that 263 has been incorrectly applied or incorrectly the CIT has assumed the power under 263, then in those cases you should file an order appeal against the 263 order to the tribunal. Tribunal will hear that. There have been very interesting cases. For example, there was a case, if I remember correctly, it's IBM's case, Bangalore Tribunal, where 263 order was passed and tribunal gave a stay against the assessment proceedings. So even you can do that, but that is again factual. It will depend on each case how you want to handle that thing. But 263, file an appeal to the tribunal if you think that jurisdiction exercised by the CIT is not correct. 264 is not there here. 264 is not there here. So if a 264 order which will naturally not be against the assessee, but you have filed a petition of 264 revision, the CIT rejects that petition. Suppose 197 nil deduction you have filed, the assessing officer says 10%, you file 264 to the CIT also says 10% is correct. Then against that 264, what you will have to do? Writ petition to the High Court, because it is not an appealable order. This is what we mean by jurisdiction. This is what we mean by appealable orders. You have to be very clear that it is an appealable order coming here in 253 when we are dealing with the tribunal, and 246 capital A when we are dealing with CIT appeals. So if it is not an appealable order under 246A, you can't go to CIT appeals. Like 197 is not an appealable order in 246A. Right? So you have to be very clear. This is what we mean by jurisdiction of tribunal. One, it should be appealable order. It should come within the territorial limits and such things. And the question was asked that if there is a delay by whether the that order of the CIT or tribunal rejecting the appeal for delay, whether it can be appealed to the higher authority. On page 7, I have given a citation where CIT appeals had refused to admit Madras High Court Dalmia Magnesite. They said even the order of refusal to admit is an order and that can be appealed against. So that also appeal can be gone to there. So these are now, basically we have seen that we have come, first stage we have crossed. We have filed an appeal now. 253 deals with filing of appeal. Now we will come to 254 and 255 dealing with the procedures and what is the scope of a proceedings before the tribunal. 254.1 deals with the scope of proceedings before the tribunal. What is the tribunal's power in terms of how it can handle the appeal, what are its duty. Right? Now again a very simple section, it says appellate tribunal may, after giving both the parties to an appeal an opportunity of being heard, pass such orders thereon as it may thinks fit. As it thinks fit. So it will give an opportunity to both the parties, then it will pass an order. Orders thereon as it thinks fit. So you see the words thereon as it thinks fit. As in thinks fit naturally widens its powers. That means it can have any power relevant to that appeal and it is very wide power. Compare this with your powers under 251 to CIT appeals. It is having, no doubt it is also very extensive, but it can say conform, reduce, enhance, annul the assessment. But here as it thinks fit, that means the scope of power is very wide. So what we need to understand is two aspects. What is the scope of appeal before the tribunal and what are the powers of the tribunal. Subject matter of appeal we call it, which is the next point. That subject matter of appeal is thereon. On what issues the tribunal can give an order. It can give issues, pass such orders thereon. What do you mean by thereon? Okay. Good amount of litigation has happened on this word and now we have clarity in terms of what it really means. So question is, what would be the scope of proceedings before the tribunal? Can tribunal go into new issue? Can it start scrutinizing your return of income and say you have not computed this properly, this should have been levied, that is there, the tax rate is incorrect? Can it do? CIT appeals can sometime do it. He can enhance this. Can tribunal enhance the income? So tribunal scope gets circumscribed by these words. No doubt as it thinks it is wide, but thereon circumscribes its thing. So the subject matter of an appeal of the tribunal is the grounds of appeal raised by the assessee. Grounds of appeal raised by the assessee, right? So it has to be with respect to those grounds of appeal. It can't go beyond those grounds of appeal. I'll give you an example. For example, the assessing officer, you have claimed a particular item as revenue expenditure. He makes its capital expenditure and gives you depreciation. Now you have not filed an appeal on this depreciation. You have not filed issue on this, you are happy with the depreciation. You have filed appeal on other issues, either B, C, D issues. On this A issue, you have not filed an appeal. Can tribunal now say, no, he gave the depreciation wrong, I will take back the depreciation? No. Because what is grounds of appeal before the tribunal? Only that becomes the subject matter of an appeal. That there grounds of appeal which are arising. Therefore, the tribunal will not be able to enhance the income, will not be able to increase the income or go into new issues which are not part of the appeal papers or not part of the grounds. Now when it comes to assessee, the assessee has filed an appeal taking so and so grounds. So what would be the scope of assessee's grounds? The assessee's grounds will emanate from the CIT appeals order first. Can the assessee take new ground, additional ground, change his grounds? That becomes an important aspect also. For example, if we go back to our old example of 147 and merits, I have before CIT appeals did not question the jurisdiction under 147. Can I claim the question the jurisdiction under before the tribunal? Many times it would happen that appeal would come to us for the tribunal. Some other consultant has handled the appeal at the lower authorities. By mistake, inadvertently, that person has not taken a ground on legal issues. Notice under 143(2) is not served, this is not there, that is not there. Lot of such issues will come. Order is unsigned. Right? So these issues, which are legal issues, which emanate from the record of existing record, where no new facts have to be placed on record. If I have to place a new facts, I have to go to additional evidence. We'll come to that separately. But in those cases, you can raise any new ground, legal ground, even if those grounds are not raised before the lower authorities. You can do that. The Supreme Court's decision in National Thermal Power Corporation will help you on that. You can. This is also again a landmark decisions. Everyone should read this. Hukumchand Mills and National Thermal Power. Both of this in the footnote in page 8. Two very good decisions for you to understand the powers of tribunal. Two very good decisions, and one should try and read these decisions. Okay. So assessee can, if the details, new question which is arising from the facts which are there on record, he can come up with an additional ground, he can change his ground, but naturally whatever is the procedure, sometimes we have to follow it. Suppose I have filed an appeal and then I want to file an additional ground, I have to file it as an additional ground along with a petition for admission of additional ground. The ground should be sequentially numbered. That means if the ground is 10 in the main appeal, this should be 11th. Ground number 11. So it should, all that things have to be done, but you can always do it. It is within the assessee's power to do it. You look at this, the assessee has power, but the department does not have power, or the tribunal does not have a power to expand the scope, but assessee surely has a power to expand the scope. This is a very critical point for us to keep it in mind. So this should be kept in mind. Then we come to the aspect of has it things fit. The two concepts here are natural power of a tribunal and Supreme Court's decision, which are cited on page 9, Mohammad Kuni, again a landmark decision, 71 ITR 815. Try and read this. That what is the real power of the tribunal? Now, earlier, when the Mohammad Kuni's case came, the provision related to stay were not there in statute. Whether the tribunal can give a stay or not give a stay were not there in statute. So the issue before the Supreme Court was whether the tribunal can give a stay. So the Supreme Court said powers which are conferred under 254 of the appellate tribunal with widest possible amplitude must carry with them necessary implication all powers, duties incidental and necessary to make the exercise of these powers fully effective. So all incidental power to make the exercise, what is the exercise here? Substantial justice is the exercise. To make it effectively, to make that effective, if any power I have to exercise, any incidental power I have to exercise, the tribunal has to exercise. Those are within the limits. Those are within the limits of the tribunal, and those can be exercised by the tribunal. So as it thinks fit is very wide. Though at that point of time, the power to stay the demand, stay the proceedings were not there in the statute, the Supreme Court in Mohammad Kuni's case said that tribunal's powers are very wide. They also applied Maxwell's interpretation of statutes. So if something is asked, implied, so if an act confers a jurisdiction, it also impliedly also grants power of doing all such acts, employing such means, as are essentially necessary to its execution. So if you give some power, whatever are incidental power to do that particular act, also are given to that particular authority. So this is the principle. That principle Supreme Court applied in Mohammad Kuni's and said the tribunal has power to grant the stay in those cases. No doubt subsequent legislature amendments are there, we will come to that. Those try to limit the tribunal's existing power. The point for us to understand is tribunal powers are wide, it has natural power of a court, and unless specifically restricted, the tribunal can exercise its power. For example, it can give a direction to the assessing officer to produce records, it can ask him to do certain inquiry, it can ask assessee to produce certain information. All that are the natural powers of tribunal which it can exercise within its within the statutory limits. Right? So these powers are very wide, keep this in mind. When an order becomes an order of tribunal, just because an appeal is heard, it doesn't become an order of tribunal. To become an order, the order has to be dated and communicated, signed, dated and communicated. Till then it is not an order of tribunal. For example, you argue a matter, the tribunal says that it is allowing the appeal or it is making certain pronouncement, or it said just in heard. Post that, certain events may happen and order may not come. Then it is not complete. The proceedings will get complete only when you really have the order as per Rule 34. Rule 34 very clearly says that to become an order of the tribunal, it has to be signed and it has to be dated and signed. And that is the time when you can say the order has come, and that is the sign when the appeal proceedings are completed. And post that, you are right to go to High Court, or till then the tribunal has jurisdiction. Once the order has passed, the tribunal has no further jurisdiction on that appeal, has no further right on that appeal. Okay. Next issue, can tribunal remand? We have seen 251 CIT appeals. Can CIT appeals remand? Can he remand to assessing officer CIT appeals? No, he can't remand. He has only 4 powers: reduce, confirm, enhance, annul. He can't say that I will remand to the assessing officer, you do whatever you want. That power is not there with the CIT appeals. If the CIT appeals want certain documents, information, he has to call for a remand report from the assessing officer, look into the remand report, ultimately and give the opportunity to the other party, and ultimately he has to take a decision this way or that way. But CIT appeals can't remand. Whereas the tribunal, specific power is there in Rule 28 of Income Tax Appellate Tribunal rules, that tribunal can remand. It says that if the tribunal is of the opinion that a case should be remanded, it may remand it to an authority from whose orders the appeal has been preferred, or to the assessing officer, with such directions as the tribunal may think fit. So there is no restriction here. And again, as I said, as it thinks fit. It doesn't say confirm, reduce or anything in 254, unlike 251. So here the power is wider and the tribunal can remand. No doubt sometimes it becomes a bane for the assessees because matter goes back to the assessing officer. But sometimes it is also necessary because further inquiries may have to be done, documents may not be in record. So such situations may arise. So therefore, this Rule 28 specifically gives power to the tribunal either to remand to the CIT appeals or to the assessing officer as it thinks fit, as the circumstances may be there. We can always plead. We can always plead, but it may pass an order which it thinks fit.
Sometimes the issues may be such that it might give a second innings to the
See there in those cases where all the legal, in terms of factual issues, all the facts are on record and there is no necessity to make any further inquiry. In those cases, remand is not appropriate. There are various High Court decisions. In a fit case, if you think the remand was inappropriate, if you think that in a fit case remand was inappropriate, in those cases against the tribunal's order of remand, you can file an appeal to the High Court. High Court will look into it and High Court will give a direction to the tribunal that your remand is incorrect, kindly decide. There are a lot of such cases where based on High Court directions, the tribunal's order is cancelled and the tribunal has to re-look into the appeal. So if you think it is a fit case, then you will have to take that recourse. No doubt during the hearing, if they are suggesting that we are remanding, you should always, if you think it is a fit case, you should make a submissions that these are all on record and we may request that it should not be remanded. See, TPO is a part of assessment proceedings only. Generally, as he thinks fit is so wide that he can remand. But remanding to TPO is of really no consequences, but ultimately the AO has to pass a draft assessment order or final assessment order. Generally, the habit of or the practice is they will say AO/TPO. So it goes to AO or TPO. Ideally, it should be remanded to AO. AO should make a reference to TPO. If you go by the provisions of a statute, 92 CA, read with rules, the limitation period in 153, etc., you should go to AO. AO should remand to the TPO. But if the tribunal writes AO/TPO or only writes TPO, doesn't make a much of a difference, because within the tribunal's power as it thinks fit, it might be fit. But even if it goes to TPO, ultimately the assessing officer is the person who has to pass the order. Yeah.
Demand is always limited in scope.
Now remand will depend. Now here, if the remand is with direction, that you do so and so, you check so and so, then the assessing officer's role in that second innings is only to do that. To put it crudely, if the tribunal says sit, you have to sit, and if it says stand, you have to stand. But where the remand is complete remand, that we give for a fresh assessment, relook into this without any specific directions, then in those cases, assessing officer will relook into same issues. He cannot bring in a new addition. He cannot bring in a new addition. Now the addition is made, say for example, issue A. With respect to issue A, he will have a complete role, but he cannot bring in issue B in that order giving effect to the tribunal order. Okay. But if there is a specific directions, so do so and so, then on that issue A also his role will be with respect to so and so only. Okay. Yeah.
In case comes for the assessing officer for remand, again he passes same order, then we have to go to CITFL or directly ITAT.
If it is not covered under 144C, it will have to go to CIT appeals. It will have to go to CIT appeals because it will be an order under 143(3) read with 254, which will be appealable to CIT appeals. There are 2 to 3 decisions which have said that against these order, you can go to the tribunal directly. But in my personal opinion, those decisions are wrong. I would suggest there is a Tally's decision of Bangalore tribunal which said that, which admitted an appeal against the remand order directly in tribunal. But I don't think that's a correct view. In my personal opinion, it should go back to CIT appeals. If it is a draft assessment order, you can go to DRP. Right. Tribunal's power of enhancement we have seen. I gave an example also, revenue capital. Supreme Court's decision in InCorp is a very good decision. Then I have given further citations also. You can go through these decisions. Very clear, has no power of enhancement. Unlike CIT appeals, which has a power of enhancement, the tribunal's role is restricted to subject matter of appeal. Tribunal cannot make the assessee worse off. The tribunal cannot make the assessee worse off. He cannot say that assessee is saddled with additional liability in the proceedings before the tribunal. Supreme Court's decision and various decisions are there. It has to be, it will be in either same position or it has to be beneficial to the assessee. It cannot be worse off. Now, another aspect is, suppose there is an appeal before the tribunal that for a particular assessment year, can the tribunal give direction for some other year? Or it will have to restrict its finding to that year only. I will give an example. Suppose you have claimed a deduction for certain expenditure on provision basis. You have claimed in year 1, okay? And you would have paid that expense in year 2. But year 2 naturally you don't claim a deduction because it goes out of provision and you have claimed in year 1. Simple accounting, okay? Assessing officer will take a view that claim on the provision is incorrect, therefore he disallows in year 1. He doesn't give you deduction in year 2, so there becomes a double addition, right? You don't get in year 1 also, you don't get in year 2 also, though it is expended out of your pocket. Now you file appeal against year 1. Now while hearing appeal against year 1, tribunal thinks that yes, this provision should be disallowed. But can tribunal say you allow it for the next year? Or it should be restricted to that assessment year only? 150 will be applicable. There is a Karnataka court decision on 150. I will come to 150. But can it be done? So ideally, if you say, if it was a reverse situation, you become worse off. Suppose there is an income you didn't offer in year 1 and year 2 for some reason you are saying it is not taxable. Can tribunal say it should be taxable in 1 year and reopen under 147? That time assessee will take a position you can't give in direction for other year. Now, ideally, if you see various cases, Muralidhar Bhagwan Das, Marubeni's case, I have given citations on page 11. They have taken a view that the direction should be for that assessment year only. It should be specific for that assessment year only. There is an exceptional, some cases I have taken like perfect equipments. They have given a favorable decision which in favor of the assessee, that if there is a case like in our example, provision disallowed in year 1, I have not got in 2 also, the tribunal feels the disallowance of provision is 1, then whether it can give a direction to year 2. Also please understand that the recent reassessment guidelines, reassessment changes which have happened 2 years back, if you see 147 definition of information in explanation to 147, there they have said that the information, 148, the information will include any finding of tribunal or order. So the tribunal is trying to say that any finding of or order of a tribunal can become an information to issue a 148 notice and do a 147 assessment. This is now specifically included in the definition of information in an explanation before the 148. So from the revenue's point of view, now possibly it will get protected, but again you will have to assume that it is within 3 years, 10 years, those jurisdictional conditions will still apply. So if it is 15 years old and tribunal decision comes now, naturally he can't do it on 148 also. But if it is within that time frame, then he can still possibly do a 148 applying the recent amendment to the 148. When it comes to the assessee, it is going to be challenged sometimes that when this kind of a situation I just explained, provision and deduction, that you don't get deduction in both the years because first year the provision assessing officer is disallowing and second year you have not claimed a deduction, there is no question of deduction, right? So there is a viewpoint that a tribunal cannot give direction for other years. Sometimes we will find in tribunal order at the practical level you will make a submission and tribunal will give a direction. But if revenue challenges it, it's going to be challenged. Wherever you find this kind of a situations, try to protect the assessee by filing appeal for the next year also. If there is already an appeal for that year, suppose there is some addition for that year also, take this as a ground that it was disallowed in that year, give it to me. If the assessment is open for the next year, file a letter that you disallowed the provision last year, kindly give it to me in this year. So, or possibly file a 154 because his own order is there and that becomes a record, apparent from record. Try to do something in those cases. No doubt if you make a submission before the tribunal, sometimes the tribunal may give a favorable view because there are conflicting decisions on this particular point. But try and see in cases where such kind of things are there, you try and raise these issues in the earlier years or the subsequent years. Suppose if it is a preceding year and appeal is pending before the CIT appeals, file an additional ground before the CIT appeals. That see this assessing officer has disallowed it, kindly give me deduction here. Whatever could be the situation, just look at it practically and keep the issue alive in both the years. At least you will get in one of the years. At the most there will be an interest cost. If the tax rate is same, you don't suffer either ways, only interest cost will be there. So you will be protecting the assessee and in these kind of cases, tribunal will also say that at least 1 year the deduction should be available, you will get it. Okay. Now we go further. What is the DR can argue? Can he set out a next point on page 11? Can DR is the departmental representative. Now when he is arguing a matter before the tribunal, what all he can argue? Can he come with a new case, new analogy before the tribunal? Or he will have to restrict himself to the assessment order? Whom is he representing? Department assessing officer is representing. I will give an example. Say the assessing officer says this income is taxable as fees for technical services and so therefore 10% TDS should have been done or 10% it is taxable at 10%, whatever. Can now the DR say, no, it is not FTS, it is business income, there was a permanent establishment in India, therefore it is taxable at 40%. Can the DR argue this? Or he has to restrict his scope to what the assessing officer done. He cannot contradict the assessing officer. He is his own person. He is his own person. So if you see the decisions of Mahindra and Mahindra special bench, and there are various tribunal decisions cited in the next page, very clearly said that DR has to take, see if you see this, read this paragraph itself. Department representative cannot be permitted to take contrary stand from one taken by the AO. The department representative has no jurisdiction to go beyond the order passed by the AO. He cannot raise any point different from the one considered by the AO or CIT appeals. The scope of arguments is confined to supporting or defending the impugned order. He can support. Maybe he can make a new argument in support why it is FTS in my example. But he cannot altogether set up a different case. Now this is not FTS, this is something else. Right? So this also can be handy if the departmental representative is arguing something which is way beyond what the assessing officer has done. You should raise an objection before the bench that is contrary to what the AO has said, which is not within his case, and Mahindra and Mahindra is special bench binding on entire tribunal. And there are n number of decisions which I have also given as a citation in the next page. So, yeah, the note 14 there, various cases, Mackenzie, Aishwarya Rai, Prakash L. Shah, various cases are there. So the DR's arguments will have to be restricted within the confines of what the assessing officers. Yeah.
Suppose the assessing officer has not examined the PE case and CIT by way of enhancement he issues a notice.
Then it is fine if the CIT issues a notice and CIT gives a finding.
He also satisfied that there is no PE.
Then DR has no case to argue that about a P. Absolutely nothing for him to argue that there is a P. He can't even raise that objection. But if the CIT appeals has enhanced, given a finding that there is a P, then the DR possibly, because he is supporting the CIT appeals order, there he can argue. But if the AO CIT appeals has nothing to do with it, the DR cannot come with a new argument before the tribunal.
Can he argue that stand of the CIT that if there is no PE is wrong?
No, he can't argue. That's what I am saying. He can't argue.
By way of cross objection?
No. See, it is not emanating from the order. Okay, you cannot now make the assessee worse before the tribunal. You cannot make the assessee worse before the tribunal. And he has to confirm. That's why you read this decision of Mahindra and Mahindra special bench very lucidly. And they have articulated this, that why. See, who could have done this? The CIT under 263 could have done this. See, AO concludes that there is no P. The CIT could have revised that order under 263 and said that there is a P. Now, can the DR administer the 263? He naturally cannot do it. Can he take over the role of 263? He can't do it. So, DR cannot argue it. Possibly department thinks that there is a P, let them do 263. But DR cannot come and play a different role here. So, DR cannot get into the role of 263 because if you see this Mahindra, page 11 only, they very clearly say he cannot set up an altogether different case. If the department representative is taken a new contention, dehorse the view taken by AO, that would mean the departmental representative stepping into the shoes of the CIT exercising jurisdiction 260, which is not permitted. He cannot do what the CIT would have done in 263, he cannot do it. And in a fit case, let them do 263. But DR now cannot say my assessing officer order is wrong, my CIT appeals order is wrong, what I am saying is correct. He can't do that because he is representing them. Heads of income sections may still be okay, which mean, if it is enhancement, you will have to, then so if the AO and CIT appeals has said PGBP, then he can't say that it will be house property. Okay. But suppose it is just 68 and 69A, then he can possibly say the tribunal also taking just change in section is of not any, because your liability, your overall remains same in most of the cases.
From 37 to 69 is bogus expenses. Can tribunal for first time?
No. No. Because it will result to enhancement. They have to say I will disallow under 37, that's all. They cannot say it is taxable in 69C and increase your tax liability. That again they have to do 263 for that. Let them do 263 for that. But they can't do it, that you can't play that role before the tribunal. Tribunal role is restricted to thereon, that means the grounds of appeal, subject matter of an appeal, and restrict to that. You cannot be worse off. That's what the Supreme Court says in MCOP's decision. Okay. Validity of an act you can't raise before the tribunal because tribunal is created by the act. So, validity of any statute, if you want to say that particular section is unconstitutional, has to go to High Court or Supreme Court. First go to High Court, a writ, article 226 of the writ, you have to follow. The tribunal will never pronounce on the validity of a statute. It will not pronounce on the validity of a statute. I will give one example when we go forward. The stay issues which are there, all those can only be taken before the High Court in a writ petition, not also in a 260A appeal. If you want to challenge the validity of your act, you will have to file a writ petition to the High Court. You can't make it a part of appeal under 260 capital A. That has to go a separate writ petition before the High Court, because there the High Court will be exercising its constitutional duty under Article 226 and pronounce under Article 226, whereas appeal 260A will be restricted to the appeal grounds. Okay. Now, can tribunal dismiss the appeal ex parte? Someone asked the question, notice has not come, right? So, Rule 24 and Rule 25, these rules of the Income Tax Appellate Tribunal rules deal with an appeal hearing ex parte. So, there could be circumstances where notice has not come. For some reason, you have appointed an advocate or a chartered accountant, he is not appeared on that day, or there could be various reasons why the somehow the assessee has not appeared before the assessee's representative has not appeared before the tribunal. It could happen for the revenue also, though very unlikely for revenue because there is a fixed person DR for the revenue and he will generally be present in the court. But for the assessee it can happen. So Rule 24 says where on the day fixed for the hearing or any other date on which hearing may be adjourned, the appellant does not appear. Rule 24 is for the appellant, Rule 25 is for the respondent, otherwise copy paste, there is no change. Does not appear in person or through an authorized representative. When the appeal is called on for hearing, the tribunal may dispose the appeal on merits after hearing the respondent. So appellant doesn't appear, they can hear the respondent and dispose the appeal. Now look at the words here, dispose the appeal on merits. What it says? Has to dispose the appeal on merits after hearing the respondent. What it means is that even if the appellant does not appear, they have to give decision on the grounds. Okay? But again, sometimes practice and law is different. You will practically see that bench, if you don't appear, they will quote a decision which is there on page 13, Multiplan India. And this is a standard text. If you see, if you see 500 cases of ex parte order, all will have this. Okay? This is a wrong interpretation of this decision. Despite that, they will quote this particular decision of Multiplan India and say assessee has not appeared, and based on the decision of Multiplan India, we are dismissing the appeal ex parte. Now, the Supreme Court in Supreme Court Chennappa Mudliar's case, it was in the context of income tax 74 ITAT 41, very clearly said that you can't dismiss ex parte, you have to decide on merits. Bharat Petroleum's case said you should decide on merits because the language of 24 very clearly says may dispose the appeal on merits after hearing the respondent. So ideally, the tribunal should not dispose an appeal ex parte. They should decide the appeal on merit. Practically, they generally dismiss the appeal saying assessee has not appeared. Now, if that happens, what happens? We have to come to proviso. Proviso to Rule 24, it is same for 24 and 25, that provided that where an appeal has been disposed as provided above, that means ex parte, the appellant appears afterwards and satisfies the tribunal that there was sufficient cause for his non-appearance, or when the appeal was called down for the tribunal shall make an order setting aside the ex parte order and restoring the appeal. So what it says is, the assessee appears afterwards, or the authorized representative appears afterwards, satisfy the tribunal that there was sufficient cause for non-appearance first time. It could be anything. Okay. This one case that the AR went out of the hall to attend a phone call and the appeal was dismissed, and later on it was restored. So there could be numerous, as I said, the story should be such, it should be believable. Right? So there could be various reasons, as someone said notice has not appeared, it is struck in post or XYZ. So what you will have to do is come to the proviso. As per the proviso, you have to satisfy the assessing officer, satisfy the tribunal that there was sufficient cause for my not appearing before the tribunal, and therefore kindly cancel that, set aside that ex parte order and restore the appeal. So they restore the appeal and the appeal will again be heard on merits. Appeal will again be heard on merits. So they are not giving you in. So when you come to this proviso, the practical way to do this is file an miscellaneous petition. You can call it miscellaneous petition, miscellaneous application. We will see that as we go forward. That you file a miscellaneous petition or miscellaneous application under the rules. Then you give the reasons that what are the sufficient reason why you could not appear, and the tribunal will hear that miscellaneous petition in the open court. And if your reason is sufficient, most 99% of the cases, they will set aside the order and restore the main appeal. Okay. Then the main appeal will again be posted for the hearing. Don't make the again same mistake of non-appearing again. But once it's posted for the hearing, you have to go and appear and argue the matter on merits. So this is how the ex parte situation works. As I said, though the main limb of Rule 24 says you should dispose on merits, at a practical level they have quoted this Multiplan India and dismissed many appeals if it is ex parte. If the assessee does not appear 3-4 times, they will 2-3 times they will dismiss it ex parte, and in 99% of the cases they will restore it back if the assessee gives a valid reason. Then we can go up to 12:30, no, Deepak? Okay. So next is tribunal's power to contempt. They have a power, there is a Supreme Court decision. Practically we don't see much cases because we have now I think only 45 minutes, we'll focus on more important aspects. Now if there is an undue delay, now see the tribunal hears this, the matter on a particular date, and can it pass order after 6 months, 9 months, 10 months? The problem is if they pass order so late, they would have forgotten what the assessee has argued in most of the cases. Most of us will not remember what breakfast was there in the morning, right? So in such cases, the problem will be that your arguments, if they are not recorded in a note or thing, and even if they are recorded, what the person has a capacity to remember will not be there, and in such cases there will be mistakes or something will miss out. So the income tax also, if you see, they provide it is rule 18 which gives 60 days time that the order should be pronounced in the 60 days time, okay, plus additional 30 days if it cannot be pronounced in the 60 days. So there is generally a 90 days time for pronouncement of the order, for passing the order. So within this 90 days it should be passed. The one case I have cited of Bombay High Court where there was substantial gap, almost 9 months from hearing and passes, the Bombay High Court said that this is not, it doesn't show that justice. The justice should not just be done, it should also be shown that it is done. Otherwise the people will not have confidence in the process, right? The assessor's grievance was it is against me and is not captured, where the tribunal has not captured various arguments made by me, right? And that would practically happen if the gap is very high. So that is why the rule 18 provides for 60 days, ideally 60 days plus 30 days, so 90 days time to pass the order. And there are a few other decisions also in the context of income tax also, that you should not be an undue delay in passing the order. This is the rule. Practically what happens? So what happens is, if suppose they have heard and 90 days are very close, they are not able to pass order for various reasons, workload and XYZ reasons. Either they will post it for clarification and by another 90 days. So what happens on 89th day or 80th day, you post it again, say we have so and so clarification, you get another free release of 90 days. Or they will release the order, not recall, release the order, release the case, that means that bench will not pass the order, you will have to argue again. That is a practical difficulty. The rules were made with a proper intention that there should not be sufficient gap, and the order should be passed as early as possible. In fact, in the stay petition, the order should be passed on the same day and assessee should be made available copy on the same day, rule 35A. On the same day it should be made available. Otherwise, when you have filed a stay because there is an emergency, because there is a collection threat. So ideally there should not be a gap. Practically we see some difficulties there at many times, but the rule is there and we have practical difficulties also. Okay.